Welcome back to MathSpark. In this video, we're going to talk about taking the first diagnostic test. Last time, we saw how to get registered with MyMathTest and how to enroll in whatever class we wanted to take in the fall semester. Now, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at this My Upcoming Assignments and notice that there's the Calc 1 Diagnostic Test. It might also say Trigonometry Diagnostic Test or College Algebra Diagnostic Test, depending on what section you've loaded into. So we're going to select this test. So what we're about to take is a 20-problem, 1-hour diagnostic test. That is, it's a test designed to see if you have the skills you need in order to succeed in the class you want to take. So, for example, I'm taking the Calc 1 diagnostic test, so I'm going to get 20 problems that are going to test whether or not I've got the skill set needed to succeed in Calc 1. Do I know the prerequisites for that course? Now, keep in mind, your goal is to answer them as completely and correctly as you can without access to a calculator or online notes. Now, if you've never entered mathematics into a computer before, it might be a good idea to try this tutorial. When you do, a small pop-up window will show up that has a number of small videos itself, which will show you how you enter mathematics answers into a test, how you use the math palettes on the side of the screen, or how you go and use the graphing tool. When you've finished with the tutorials, you're ready to start the test. So let's go. And the test begins. So the problems will pop up on a screen like this. One of the things that you can do is you can select on these buttons up at the top to sort of jump through the different kinds of problems. So for example, problem 4 is a problem about trig. I click on problem 8. Problem 8 is a factoring problem. So you can take a look through all of the different problems to sort of see which problems you'd like to attack first, which problems you'd like to attack second. Right here, there's a counter which is keeping track of the time you've got left. So let's take a look at what some of these problems are, and I'll go back to the beginning. So problem 1, multiply and write your answer in lowest terms. So I'm going to do some work on scratch paper. Alright, if we jump over to our scratch paper, we see that the problem is to multiply and write in lowest terms the product 2a plus b over 7 times 5 minus c times 98 times c minus 5 squared over 14 times a plus b squared. So the first step in multiplying fractions is to multiply across the numerators and the denominators. So across the numerators, we're going to have a 2 and a 98 and an a plus b and a c minus 5 squared as factors. Across the denominator, we're going to have a 7 and a 14, a 5 minus c, and an a plus b quantity squared as factors. Now the problem says to write it in lowest terms, so let's see if we can get any cancellations. For example, 2 goes into 14 7 times. Does 7 go into 98? Let me do a quick division. And so I see that 7 goes into 98 14 times. So I can cancel 7 into 98 14 times. A plus b goes into a plus b squared once, so it leaves me one of those. Now, 5 minus c and c minus 5 aren't exactly the same thing, but I could rewrite 5 minus c as negative 1 times c minus 5. And then c minus 5 goes into c minus 5 squared once. So let me clean up what I've got. Across the top, I've got a 14, none of those, and a c minus 5. Across the bottom, I've got a 7, a negative 1, and an a plus b. So I get 14 times c minus 5 over negative 7 times a plus b. And let's see, 7 goes into 14 twice. And so that's going to leave me with negative 2 times c minus 5 over a plus b. And so that would be my final answer. So let's go and enter this back in MyMathTest. So now I want to enter that onto my screen. So I will click inside the square to get things going. And let's see, it was negative, and then I had a fraction. So I'm going to use these palettes on the side to sort of set things up here. So it makes a fraction. And it was 2 times c minus 5 on the numerator. And then in the denominator, there was an a plus b. And so, not a plus n, a plus b. And so that's my answer to this problem, and so I will go down and select Next Question. At some points, I'm going to go and enter the answer exactly, In this case, I know that the answer is supposed to be the fraction 1/4, so I'll go to the fraction palette, put a 1 on the top, put a 4 on the bottom, and then enter that. This question happens to be a multiple choice question. Some questions will include graphs. If the detail of the graph is too small, you can click on the small magnifying glass to have a slightly zoomed in version of the graph so that you can compare the different expressions or the different graphs. Some answers will require that you put in a square root sign. For example, based on my scratch work, the answer to this should be -√3. So I will type in a negative, select the square root value, or the square root palette, and then type in my 3. Other problems will ask that you write down a list of solutions to an equation. You're going to use commas to separate those solutions, and you might have to put some pi's in it. So, based off of my scratch work, one of the solutions to this is the fraction pi/3. So I'll put in a fraction, select pi for the numerator, 3 for the denominator, and then another one of my solutions was 2 pi/3. So I'll put a comma, and then add a new fraction. So 2 pi/3. And I will continue this process, adding the other solutions to the problem until I have, in my case, 4 solutions, which is what I think the correct answer should be. And then I'm ready to submit the answer. If you've finished with all 20 problems and you've got time remaining, it's not a bad idea to go back and double check your answers. You can again go back and click on any of the previous problems that you took a look at to double check your work. As soon as you are satisfied with your work, we'll go down to Submit Test and move on to the next step, the summary screen. The summary screen will give us some rough idea of how we did on a particular set of problems. In this case, at a quick glance, it tells me by green check marks the problems that I did correctly, and by red check marks the problems that I did incorrectly. Now we can look at any one of these problems in hindsight. For example, if I click on question 4, I'll get what question 4 on my test was, together with the correct answers. On the other hand, if I select a problem that I got wrong, for example, problem 7. Problem 7 was to solve this equation. The correct solution should have been -4/9, 0, and 4/9. If I put my mouse over it, I can find what I entered, and apparently I was way off on this one. I got one solution of 2/9. Notice that it doesn't tell me what I've done wrong, just that I've gotten this particular problem wrong. We'll address this in a little bit. If I go back to the test summary, I'll also see some problems that have a check and an X, a right and a wrong. So what does that actually mean? Well, let's see. So in this case, my problem 14 was a multi-part problem. It had 3 different parts to it. I apparently got the first 2 parts correctly, but the last part, whose correct answer was x squared minus 6x plus 4, I had an extra negative running around in it. So I was given 2/3 credit on this problem. And I can see right there, there's my 2/3 credit. I'm guessing based on problem 9 that it had 2 parts and I got one of them right. And so if I click on problem 9, 2 parts, I got the first one wrong, but I did get the slope-intercept form of the line correctly. So how do you know if you've done a good job or a bad job on this? And keep in mind, your performance on this first round is irrelevant. This was you just getting the hang of this. The key thing to focus your attention on would be this score. Now obviously you're trying to get as high a score as possible, but what you'd really be shooting for is a score of 75% or greater. If you can't earn a score of 75% with practice, then you're not going to have the prerequisite skills to be successful in that course. On the other hand, if you can earn a score higher than 75%, then you stand a very good chance of making great progress in this class. And the higher the percentage you get, the better the progress we would hope that you make. So once you're done reviewing your test, you can go to results. We'll show you how many tests you've taken and what your score was, the amount of time it took you to do it when you took the test. And we'll also have a link to a study plan. Let's click on the study plan and see what we've got. In addition to the diagnostic test, Each program has identified a number of what are called mastery points, techniques that you should have great skill. Now, in 20 problems, we're not going to be able to test every possible skill set you've got. And so this allows you to focus more attention on those. Right now, let's not focus on this itself, but let's scroll over here to the View Progress button. This gives you a nice sort of visual description of the topics that you should be studying in order to get yourself well prepared for the start of Calc 1, to hit all of those prerequisite skills. You might notice that some of the objectives are completely filled in blue, others are partially filled in, and others are completely blank. And that's because while there are many, many skills that we would like you to have mastered for your class, only some of those skills will be demonstrated on any particular practice test. Ideally, a student who's going into a particular class will have all of these entries dark blue. So how do we use these to practice and to improve our skill sets? Well, that's an excellent question, and it's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next video.